Sills. Some people tell stories. Faith Ringgold paints them and sews them. Using needles, thread, beads, and fabrics of all kinds, Ringgold makes masks, puppets, and quilts that tell stories about her family and the African American community in which she lives. Faith Ringgold was born in 1930 in Harlem, a part of New York City. She had asthma as a child and was often too sick to go to school. To keep her daughter from getting bored, Willie Posey Jones, Faith's mother, taught her needlework and gave her fabric and needles and thread. Faith hated being sick, but she loved working with her hands and using her imagination to create beautiful things. So without realizing it, Faith's mother helped her to become an artist. Faith's mother and her father, Andrew, did something else that helped Faith achieve her goals. They helped her believe that she could accomplish whatever she set out to do. Faith's mother took her to see famous stars, musicians such as Benny Goodman, Duke Ellington, and Judy Garland. Faith believed that she too would become a star someday. After she graduated from high school in 1948, Ringgold studied at the City College of New York to become an art teacher. That way she could support herself and do her creative work in her spare time. Ringgold taught students from kindergarten through college in the New York City public schools for almost 20 years. She painted when she could, landscapes at first and later on subjects having to do with the struggles of African Americans. Teaching was hard work, but it helped her art to grow and change. She learned to use many materials by first having her students work with them. For a while, Ringgold taught at a high school where there was little money for art supplies, but a huge supply of Dixie mesh, which is used for needlepoint. Ringgold used the mesh and taught her students complicated needlework and bead weaving. She and her students talked and sometimes ate snacks while they worked. Ringgold explained the girls liked it, but the boys loved it. Once, while Ringgold was teaching an African arts class, a student who had just seen an exhibition of Faith's watercolor paintings questioned her. She didn't understand why Ringgold, who loved to teach her students how to work with beads and fabric, never used these materials in her own art. Ringgold didn't like being questioned, but she knew her student was right. She realized she was ignoring not only her childhood experiences, but also her interest in Africa and her heritage as a woman and an African American. In her family, women had worked with cloth for generations. Ringgold had learned needlework from her mother, and her mother had learned from Ringgold's great-grandmother, who had boiled and bleached flour sacks until they were pure white to use as quilt linings. Ringgold's great-great-grandmother, a slave, had also sewed quilts as part of her duties for a plantation owner. Ringgold wondered what people would think if she used a needle and thread instead of paint and a paintbrush in her work. These were not the materials artists usually used. It was hard enough being an African American woman artist without trying something new. An exhibition of tankas, Tibetan paintings mounted on cloth, gave Ringgold the courage to change. Now her art really blossomed. She found that with cloth, she could combine her interests in African art and her experiences growing up in Harlem. She left teaching and began sewing her own tankas and masks, sometimes with her mother's help. Aunt Edith and Aunt Bessie are two life-size cloth masks. They are portraits of Faith's aunts. Because Edith was blind and depended on Bessie, the two masks are often shown together. They can be worn much the way a costume is worn, but can also be hung from the ceiling or wall. The heads are painted canvas, and the dresses are beaded, fringed, and embroidered cloth. The mouths of the aunts are open to show the need for women to speak out. One of the aunts wears a whistle to get attention. Martin Luther King is another mask that Ringgold made. She made him larger than life size because he was such an important person. King's head is made of foam rubber, which Faith stitched and painted. The King mask looks very real. Ringgold began making quilts. One of them is Sonny's quilt, after her friend Sonny Rollins, a well-known jazz musician. It's shown on page 60. She remembers him always looking for an out-of-the-way spot to practice as horn so that he wouldn't disturb anyone. His favorite place was on the walkway of a bridge in New York. With paint and pieces of cloth, some tie-dyed like African fabric, Ringgold's quilt celebrates Rollins's work as an artist. After a time, Ringgold began to write stories on her quilts. She had learned the art of storytelling from her mother, who was an expert. Family and neighbors would gather to hear Willie Posey Jones tell tales of past experiences and future dreams. Tar Beach is one of Ringgold's story quilts. It is a large painting on cloth, surrounded by colorful pieces of quilted fabric. The story is written in the top and bottom borders. It is about a girl who was lying on a mattress on the roof of a building. Her family is having a picnic dinner there. As the girl watches the stars, she dreams of flying above the buildings and bridges. She tells her little brother, "Anyone can fly. All you need is somewhere to go that you can't get to any other way." An editor at a publishing company saw Tar Beach. She thought the story quilt should be made into a children's book. Faith was eager to try. She made a lot of new paintings to go with the story, and the book was made. Now Faith is an author as well as an artist. Ringgold has come a long way since she was a young girl at home with asthma. She has struggled to be accepted as an African American woman artist. She has tried to find her own voice in her art. She says, "I don't believe in not seeing the negative, but you can take that negative and make it positive." And that is exactly what Faith Ringgold did. Through her life and her art, she helps us realize that with hard work we can make our lives what we want. Thinking about it. 1. Of all the works of art by Faith Ringgold shown in this article, which is your favorite? What do you like about it? 2. Carmen Lomas Garza writes about herself in Family Pictures. In the article about Faith Ringgold, someone else tells the story. How might the article be different if Ringgold were to write about herself? 3. You are in an art class taught by Faith Ringgold. She is teaching you how to use cloth, needles, beads, paint, and many other kinds of materials. What will you make? What materials will you use?